He was the kind of boy people rarely noticed. Not because he was quiet only, but because the world around him had already decided he did not matter much. He lived in a small, crowded area where houses were close together and dreams felt far away. Every morning, he stepped out wearing the same faded clothes, stitched more times than anyone could count. His shoes were always a little too loose, and his bag felt heavier than it should. Even when it was nearly empty, at home, life was simple but hard. There was never enough money, and there was never enough time. His family worked long hours just to get through the day. Meals were small, but shared with care. Complaints were rare, not because life was easy, but because everyone had learned to stay quiet and keep moving. The boy watched all of this closely. He learned early how to stay out of the way, how to listen more than he spoke, and how to hide his feelings behind a calm face. School was not a place of comfort for him. He sat at the back of the class, close to the wall, where he felt less seen. Teachers tried their best, but they had many students and little patience for those who struggled. Other children laughed sometimes, not always loudly, but enough for him to hear. They joked about his clothes, his silence, and the way he always seemed lost in thought. He never replied. He kept his eyes down and waited for the day to end. But inside him, there was a world no one knew about. A world full of sound, emotion, and deep feelings that had no words. When he was alone, his thoughts were not quiet at all. They were filled with memories, questions, and a strange pull toward something he could not explain yet. He did not know what he was searching for, only that something was missing. In the evenings, after school and chores, he often walked through the neighborhood slowly. Not because he had nowhere to go, but because walking helped him breathe. That was how he first noticed the old building. It stood at the corner of the street, forgotten by time. Paint peeled from the walls, and dust covered the windows. People passed by it every day, but no one ever went inside. One evening, the door was slightly open. Curious, he stepped closer. The air inside smelled old and still. Broken chairs were stacked in one corner. The floor was cracked, and the light came in through a small window. Then he saw it. In the center of the room sat an old piano. It looked tired. Some keys were yellowed, others were missing. The wood was scratched, and one leg was supported by a small block to keep it from falling. It was clear that no one had touched it in years. To anyone else, it was just junk. Something waiting to be thrown away. But the boy felt something different. He stood there, staring at it, his heart beating faster. He did not know why. He had never owned an instrument. No one in his family played music. Yet something about that piano felt familiar, almost welcoming. He slowly walked toward it and sat down on the broken bench. His hands hovered above the keys, unsure. For a moment he hesitated. What if someone came in? What if he was not allowed to be there? But curiosity was stronger than fear. He pressed one key. The sound was rough, not smooth at all. Still, it filled the empty room. He pressed another, then another. The notes were uneven, but they stirred something deep inside him. It felt like opening a door that had been locked for a long time. From that day on, the old building became his secret place. He came whenever he could, usually when the sun was setting and the streets were quieter. He never stayed too long, and he always left the way he came, careful not to be seen. The piano did not sound perfect, but he did not care. He played what he felt. There were days when his fingers hurt and days when nothing sounded right. But he kept returning. Each time, the music felt a little clearer, a little closer to what he was trying to say without words. The piano became his listener, the only place where he felt truly understood. At school, nothing changed. People still ignored him. Some still laughed. But inside, he was different. He carried the music with him. It helped him get through the long days and quiet nights. When life felt heavy, he thought about the keys, the sounds, the feeling of being free, even if only for a short while. He never told anyone about the piano. It felt too special, too fragile to share. He was afraid that if others knew, it would be taken away, or worse, broken forever. So he kept it to himself, guarding the secret like a small flame in the dark. Sometimes as he played, he imagined an audience. Not a large crowd, but people who listened. People who understood. He imagined a moment where no one laughed, no one judged, and no one turned away. He did not know if that moment would ever come, but the thought of it kept him going. What he did not know was that his quiet world was slowly changing. That old piano, hidden in a forgotten room, was about to become part of something much bigger. And the boy who no one noticed was standing at the very beginning of a journey that would test his courage, his strength, and his heart in ways he could never imagine. For now, he was still just a poor kid with worn shoes and silent dreams. But deep inside, something powerful was growing, waiting for the right moment to be heard. The days began to follow a quiet pattern. School, chores, small meals, and then the slow walk through the streets as evening settled in. From the outside, nothing about the boy's life seemed to change. But inside him, something steady was growing. Every step he took toward the old building felt lighter, as if his feet already knew where his heart wanted to go. He learned the sounds of the place. The way the door creaked when pushed too hard. The way the air felt cooler inside than outside. The way dust floated in the thin light from the window. He learned which keys worked best and which ones needed extra care. Some keys stuck, some rang too loud, and some barely made a sound at all. Instead of getting frustrated, he adjusted. He pressed softer. He pressed harder. He listened. He had no lessons and no guide. Everything came from trial and feeling. When a sound felt wrong, he tried again. When a note touched something deep inside him, he stayed with it longer. He did not know the rules of music, but he understood emotion. Sad days sounded slow and heavy. Hopeful days sounded brighter, even if the piano itself was broken. At home, life remained demanding. Some nights, he was too tired to play. His hands ached from work, and his stomach felt empty. But even on those nights, the thought of the piano stayed with him. It became something to look forward to, something that made tomorrow feel possible. He started arriving earlier when he could. Sometimes the sun was still up, and the street outside was noisy. He would sit quietly, waiting, afraid someone might walk in. When the room was finally his alone, he felt a sense of peace he had never known before. In that space, he was not poor. He was not invisible. He was simply himself. Slowly, the music began to change. What once sounded random started to feel connected. His fingers remembered patterns even when his mind did not. He surprised himself more than once, stopping mid-play, wondering how his hands knew what to do. It felt like the piano was teaching him as much as he was learning it. One evening, as he played, he did not notice the sound of footsteps outside. Someone paused near the door, listening. The boy kept playing, unaware. The listener did not enter or speak. After a few moments, the footsteps faded away. The boy never knew that someone else had heard his music for the first time. At school, his silence grew deeper. Not because he was sad, but because his thoughts were full. Teachers still overlooked him. Classmates still passed by without care. But when laughter followed him down the hallway, it did not cut as deep as before. He had something they did not see. Something that felt real. There were moments of doubt. Days when the piano sounded dull. Days when he wondered if any of this mattered. He questioned whether he was wasting time chasing a feeling that would never change his life. On those days, he almost stopped going. But each time he stayed away, something inside him felt heavy. The music called him back. It reminded him that even if the world did not listen, the piano always did. He began to imagine stories while he played. Stories of people who struggled, who fell, who stood back up again. He imagined places he had never been and moments he had never lived. Through the music, his world expanded beyond the narrow streets he walked every day. One night, the building was louder than usual. Voices echoed from outside. A community event was being planned nearby, and people were moving chairs and equipment into the hall. The boy stayed hidden, watching from a distance. He felt nervous. The room that had been his safe place no longer felt empty. For the first time, he wondered what would happen if others saw him at the piano. The thought made his chest tighten. He imagined laughter, judgment, and sharp words. He imagined being told to leave. Fear crept in, but so did a strange excitement. He went home that night without playing. Sleep came slowly. His mind was full of questions. Should he stop coming? Should he protect the piano by staying away? Or should he keep going, no matter who was watching? The next day he returned. The chairs were stacked neatly now. The room looked different, cleaner. The piano remained where it was, silent and waiting. He sat down, his hand shaking slightly. He pressed a key. Then another. The familiar feeling returned, calming him. As he played, he noticed something new. The sound carried farther now. The room echoed. Anyone nearby could hear it. He kept playing anyway. That was the moment he realized something important. The music was no longer just his secret. Whether he was ready or not, the world was slowly moving closer. He did not know that the upcoming days would test his courage more than anything he had faced before. He did not know that the piano would soon place him in front of people who once ignored him. All he knew was that stopping now would hurt more than being seen, so he played on, unaware that the quiet boy with the worn shoes was about to step closer to a moment that would change everything. The change did not happen all at once. It arrived quietly, like a shift in the air before a storm. The boy noticed it in small ways at first. More people passed near the old building. Voices lingered longer outside the door. Laughter echoed where there had once been silence. The place that had been forgotten was slowly waking up. He adjusted his routine. He came later now, when the noise faded. Sometimes he waited outside, sitting on the steps, listening. When the room finally emptied, he slipped in and went straight to the piano. His heart beat faster than before, not with fear, but with a mix of excitement and worry. Every note felt more important now, as if it carried weight beyond the walls. One evening, as he played, the door opened suddenly. He froze, his fingers still resting on the keys. An older man stood there, holding a box of supplies. Their eyes met. For a long moment, neither spoke. The boy felt heat rise to his face. He expected to be told to leave. Instead, the man nodded once and set the box down quietly. He did not say a word. He listened for a few seconds, then turned and walked out, closing the door behind him. The boy sat still, shocked. That small moment gave him a strange kind of permission. Maybe he was not doing something wrong after all. From that day on, he played with more confidence. Not loudly, not proudly, but honestly. He let the music be what it wanted to be. Sometimes it was soft and slow. Sometimes it rushed forward, like it had somewhere to go. He stopped worrying about mistakes. He focused on feeling. At school, something inside him shifted. He still sat at the back. He still spoke very little. But when others laughed, he no longer felt small. He felt distant, as if he was watching from another place. The music had given him a sense of space. Between who he was and how others saw him, there were moments when his hands shook before playing. On those days, he took a deep breath and reminded himself why he came. He did not come to be perfect. He came to be real. That thought grounded him as the days passed. The community hall became busier. A small event was being planned. Something simple to bring people together. Chairs were arranged. Lights were tested. People talked about schedules and performances. The boy listened from a distance, unseen. Each conversation made his chest tighten. Someone mentioned the piano. They laughed about how old it was, how it barely worked. One person joked that no one could play it properly anymore. The boy felt a sharp pain at those words. He wanted to speak, to say that the piano still had life left in it. But his voice stayed locked inside. That night he played longer than usual. His fingers moved with urgency, as if trying to prove something. The notes came out rough, but full. He poured every doubt, every fear into the keys. When he finished, he rested his forehead against the piano and closed his eyes. For the first time, he imagined standing in front of people. Not hidden. Not unseen. The thought scared him more than anything else he had faced. His mind filled with images of whispers, laughter, and disappointment. He almost laughed at himself for thinking such a thing. He reminded himself that this was just a dream. He was still the quiet boy no one noticed. but dreams have a way of growing when fed by hope. A few days later, while he waited outside the hall, a woman stepped out and noticed him sitting there. She asked if he was waiting for someone. His voice caught in his throat, but he shook his head. She glanced inside, then back at him. "You play, don't you?" she asked gently. He froze. After a long pause, he nodded. She did not smile or praise him. She simply said the piano had not been used in years and that it was good to hear it again. Then she walked away. That was all. But her words stayed with him. That night, sleep would not come. His mind replayed the question over and over. He wondered how many people knew, how many had heard him without him knowing. The idea made him feel exposed, but also strangely proud. The day before the event, the hall was full of movement. Decorations went up. People practiced their parts. The boy stayed away, watching from across the street. His heart pounded as he saw the piano moved slightly, placed more toward the center of the room. Something was happening. He wanted to run. He wanted to disappear back into the quiet corners of his life. But his feet stayed planted. The pull he felt toward the piano was stronger than his fear. That evening, he returned one last time before the event. The room was empty again, but it felt different. The piano stood waiting, not hidden anymore. He sat down slowly. His hands rested on the keys, trembling. He played softly, like a goodbye. Each note felt heavy with meaning. He did not know what tomorrow would bring. He only knew that this moment mattered. When he finished, he stood up and looked around the room. For the first time, he imagined it full of people. The image made his stomach twist, but he did not look away. He left quietly, unaware that the next day would force him to choose between staying invisible and stepping into the light. The quiet boy was standing on the edge of a moment that would test everything he believed about himself, and there was no turning back. The day of the event arrived with a strange stillness. The morning felt heavier than usual, as if the air itself knew something important was about to happen. The boy woke up early, though he had barely slept. His thoughts had moved in circles all night, stopping only when exhaustion took over. He sat on the edge of his bed for a long time, staring at the floor, listening to the quiet sounds of his home waking up. Nothing about the day looked special. The same small room, the same worn clothes, the same simple breakfast. Yet inside him, everything felt different. His hands felt restless. His chest felt tight. He tried to tell himself that it was just another day, but his heart did not believe it. He went to school as usual. He answered when spoken to and stayed quiet when ignored. But his mind was somewhere else. Each hour passed slowly, like time was stretching on purpose. When the final bell rang, he felt a mix of relief and fear wash over him. Instead of going straight home, he walked toward the community hall. From a distance, he could already hear voices. People were arriving early, carrying bags, laughing, greeting one another. The building no longer looked forgotten. It looked alive. He stopped across the street, unsure of what to do. Part of him hoped no one would notice him. Another part hoped someone would. His feet felt rooted to the ground. He watched as people went in and out, completely unaware of the storm inside his chest. After a while, he crossed the street and stepped inside. The room was brighter than he remembered. Chairs filled the space. Lights hung above. The piano stood in the center, clean but still old, still imperfect. Seeing it there made his throat tighten. He stayed near the wall, blending into the background. He told himself he was just there to watch. Nothing more. As the room filled, the noise grew louder. Conversations overlapped. Laughter bounced off the walls. The boy felt small again, like he used to before the piano entered his life. He wondered if he had been foolish to think he belonged anywhere near this place today. The program began slowly. A few people spoke. Others performed small acts. The crowd clapped politely. The boy listened, but barely heard anything. His eyes kept drifting back to the piano at one point. Someone mentioned that the piano might not be used because no one had signed up to play it. A few people chuckled. Someone joked that it was better left alone. The boy felt his heart drop. He told himself to stay still, to stay quiet, to let the moment pass. But his body did not listen. His hands began to shake. His breathing grew shallow. The thought of the piano sitting there untouched hurt more than the fear of being seen. Without fully deciding to, it took a step forward, then another. Each step felt louder than the last. A few people noticed him moving through the rows of chairs. Some turned to look. Whispers followed. He felt their eyes on his back, heavy and curious. He stopped near the piano. For a moment, he thought about turning around, about pretending this was a mistake. But his feet did not move. He reached the bench and sat down. The room grew quieter, not silent yet, but different. Confused murmurs replaced laughter. The boy kept his eyes on the keys. His hands hovered, frozen. Every doubt he had ever known rushed in at once. He thought of his family, of the long days, of the quiet nights, of the old building and the secret hours spent alone with the piano. He thought of the sound that had kept him going when nothing else did. He pressed the first key. The sound cut through the room, rough but clear. A few people shifted in their seats. He pressed another key, then another. His hands still shook, but the music began to flow. At first, the noise in the room did not stop completely. A few whispers lingered. Someone laughed softly. The boy felt it, but he did not stop. He focused on the sound, on the feeling beneath it. Slowly, the room began to change. Voices faded. Chairs stopped moving. People leaned forward without realizing it. The broken piano filled the space with a sound no one expected. It was not perfect, but it was honest. The boy forgot about the crowd. He forgot about his fear. For those moments, it was just him and the music. His fingers moved with purpose, guided by something deeper than thought. The final notes hung in the air. For a long moment, no one spoke. The silence was heavy and complete. Not awkward. Not confused. Just still, the boy lifted his hands from the keys, unsure of what to do next. He kept his eyes down, waiting. The silence stretched on, louder than any applause he had ever imagined. He did not yet know what this silence meant. He only knew that something had shifted, and there was no going back. The silence stayed longer than the boy expected. His hands rested in his lap, his shoulders tense, his head slightly lowered. He could hear his own breathing, slow and uneven. For a moment, he wondered if he had done something wrong. Maybe the music had not been good enough. Maybe the silence meant confusion, not understanding. Then someone stood up. The sound of the chair moving broke the stillness. Another chair followed. Slowly, one by one, people began to rise. Applause started softly, almost unsure, then grew louder. Not the kind of clapping done out of politeness, but something deeper. Something felt. The boy looked up. Faces stared back at him, not with laughter or doubt, but with surprise and emotion. Some people smiled. Some wiped their eyes. Others simply nodded, as if they had just witnessed something they could not explain. The applause filled the room. It surrounded him. He felt frozen, unsure how to respond. He stood up slowly, his legs weak, and gave a small bow without thinking. The clapping continued, steady and warm. For the first time in his life, he felt seen. After the event, people came up to him. They spoke kindly, asking where he had learned to play, telling him how the music made them feel. He answered quietly, honestly, saying he had taught himself. Some looked at him in disbelief. Others smiled even wider. He did not stay long. The attention felt overwhelming. Before the night ended, he slipped away, stepping back into the cool air outside. The noise of the hall faded behind him, but the feeling stayed. As he walked home, the streets felt different. The same cracked roads, the same dim lights, but something inside him had shifted. He no longer felt invisible, not because everyone now knew his face, but because he finally knew his own worth. At home, nothing had changed. His family greeted him the same way. Dinner was still simple. Life was still hard. Yet when he lay down that night, he felt lighter. The music replayed in his mind, not as sound, but as memory. Days passed. Word spread quietly. People in the neighborhood spoke about the boy who played the old piano. Some asked to hear him again. Others simply looked at him differently when he passed by. Not everyone understood his journey, but many respected it. The piano remained in the hall. Still old, still broken in places, but it was cared for now. Someone cleaned it regularly. Someone fixed a few keys. The boy continued to play, sometimes alone, sometimes for others. He never forgot the nights when no one listened. School felt different too. Teachers noticed him more. Classmates were quieter around him. A few tried to talk to him. He remained humble, unchanged at his core. He knew attention could fade, but what he had found inside himself would not. There were challenges ahead. Hard days did not disappear. Money did not suddenly appear. Life did not become easy overnight. But the boy faced each day with something new. Confidence. Not loud confidence. Not pride. But a calm belief that his voice mattered, even if it came through music instead of words. One evening, he returned to the hall after everyone had left. He sat at the piano and played softly, just for himself. The room listened, just like before. He smiled, remembering how it all started. He knew now that moments could change lives, that silence could be powerful, that even a poor kid with worn shoes and quiet dreams could touch hearts. As he left the hall, he looked back once more at the piano. It had given him more than music. It had given him courage, and though the crowd had been silenced that day, the boy's journey was only beginning. Time moved forward quietly at first. The night of the event did not turn into a miracle the next morning. The boy still woke up early. He still wore the same clothes. He still walked the same roads. But the way he carried himself had changed. His steps were steadier. His eyes did not drop as quickly when people looked his way. The neighborhood slowly adjusted to this new version of him. Some people smiled when they saw him pass. Others nodded, as if sharing a secret. A few asked him to play again, not in a demanding way, but with genuine curiosity. He listened more than he spoke, choosing his moments carefully. The community hall became a place of quiet activity. The piano was no longer ignored. Someone brought a cloth to cover it. Someone else replaced a loose pedal. It was still old, still imperfect, but it was respected now. When the boy sat down to play, people did not interrupt. They listened. He did not play every day. Some days, he chose to rest. Some days he chose to help at home longer than usual. Responsibility still came first. But when he played with purpose. The music was no longer only about pain or escape. It carried calm, gratitude, and patience. At school, teachers began to ask him questions, not just about lessons, but about music. One teacher offered the use of a small room after class so he could practice without distraction. He accepted quietly, unsure how to say thank you in a way that matched how he felt. Not all attention felt good. A few classmates tried to tease him again, this time out of jealousy. The words stung, but they did not cut as deep as before. He had learned that opinions changed quickly, but self-respect should not. There were evenings when doubt returned. Nights when he wondered if the moment at the piano had been the best part of his life already. Those thoughts scared him. On those nights, he went back to the hall when it was empty and played softly, reminding himself why he started. One afternoon, a small group gathered quietly near the door while he practiced. They did not clap or speak. They just listened. When he finished, they thanked him and left. That simple respect meant more to him than loud praise ever could. Opportunities did not arrive in big, dramatic ways. They came slowly. A local gathering asked if he would play again. A school event needed simple background music. Each time, he agreed, nervous but willing. Each time, he learned something new about himself. He learned how to breathe before starting, how to slow his thoughts, how to accept mistakes without stopping. The piano taught him patience, just as life had taught him endurance. At home, his family noticed the change before anyone else. They saw the quiet confidence, the calm focus. They did not fully understand music, but they understood growth. Their support was simple and strong. the boy never forgot where he came from. He still helped when help was needed. He still shared what little he had. Success in his mind was not about leaving everything behind. It was about carrying it with honesty. One evening, after a long day, he sat alone at the piano again. The hall was silent. The lights were dim. He played slowly, letting each note settle. He thought about the boy he had been when he first walked into this place, scared and unsure. He realized something then. The most important change had not been the crowd or the applause or the silence. It had been the moment he chose not to walk away. That choice stayed with him as he closed the piano and stepped outside. The night air felt calm. The future was still uncertain. Challenges still waited, but he was ready to face them, one note at a time. The poor kid was no longer invisible, not because the world had changed completely, but because he had. And the old piano, once forgotten, continued to speak through him, reminding everyone who listened that quiet strength can be the loudest sound of all. Life did not suddenly become quiet or easy after those months. In fact, it became fuller. Days seemed to move faster, and choices began to matter more. The boy felt this change in small moments, like when he woke up thinking about music before anything else, or when he caught himself listening closely to sounds around him. As if everything carried a rhythm now, he started noticing how people moved when they were tired, how voices rose when someone was excited, how silence fell when a room felt heavy. These details shaped the way he played. Music was no longer only about notes. It was about people. The community hall continued to welcome him, but he did not treat it as something he owned. He arrived early, helped arrange chairs, and stayed late to clean. He believed that respect should be returned with effort. Others noticed this and began doing the same. Slowly, the hall became a place of care, not just events. One evening, a group of younger children gathered near the piano while he practiced. They sat on the floor, quiet and curious. He felt nervous at first, worried he might distract them or make mistakes. But when he looked up and saw their focused faces, something softened inside him. He played slowly that night, choosing simple sounds. Afterward, one child asked if the piano was hard to learn. The boy paused, then shook his head gently. He said it was not easy, but it was worth trying. That small exchange stayed with him longer than he expected. At school, his schedule grew heavier. Between lessons and responsibilities, finding time to play became harder. There were days when he felt stretched thin, pulled in different directions. On those days, frustration crept in, whispering that maybe he had taken on too much. But instead of giving up, he learned to manage his time. He woke earlier. He planned his days carefully. This discipline did not come naturally, but he practiced it the same way he practiced music, one step at a time. There were moments of failure, a performance where his hands slipped, a day when his mind went blank, a time when he disappointed someone by saying no because he was overwhelmed. Each moment hurt, but each taught him something valuable. He learned that growth often comes with discomfort. The old piano remained at the center of his journey. It still had flaws. Some keys never sounded right. But instead of fighting those flaws, he learned how to work with them. The piano became a reminder that perfection was not the goal. Expression was. One afternoon, he was asked to help organize a small music session for the community. The idea scared him more than performing ever had. Standing alone was one thing. Leading others was another. He doubted himself quietly, but agreed anyway. The session was simple. No stage, no lights, just people sitting together, sharing music and stories. When it ended, the room felt warmer, closer. Someone thanked him for creating a space where they felt comfortable. He smiled, realizing that music could build more than moments. It could build connection. At home, conversations changed too. His family listened when he spoke about his days. They asked questions. They gave advice when they could. Their support was steady, even when they did not fully understand the path he was walking. Late one night, after everyone had gone to sleep, he sat quietly by the window. He thought about the boy he once was, hiding in the back of classrooms, afraid to be noticed. He thought about the silence that had changed everything. He realized that courage had not arrived all at once. It had grown slowly, fed by small choices, quiet effort, and patience. The future still felt uncertain. There were no guarantees, no clear promises. But the fear that once controlled him had lost its power. He knew now that even if the world grew loud again, it could always return to the music. As weeks passed, new faces appeared at the hall. Some came to listen. Some came to learn. The boy welcomed them all, remembering how it felt to stand alone at the beginning. One evening, after the last note faded, he closed the piano gently and looked around the empty room. He felt tired, but fulfilled. The journey was far from over, but he no longer felt lost. He stepped outside into the night, carrying with him not just music, but a quiet strength shaped by hardship, kindness, and belief. The poor kid had grown into someone who listened deeply, played honestly, and understood that the most powerful stories are often told without words. The seasons began to change, and with them, the boy's understanding of his place in the world. He noticed it during small walks home, when the air felt different and the sky seemed wider. Time had a way of teaching him lessons he could not learn at the piano alone. The community hall remained part of his routine, but it was no longer the center of everything. Music had taught him how to listen, and now he listened more closely to life itself. He paid attention to people's stories, to pauses between words, to moments when someone needed help but did not ask. He began offering quiet lessons to anyone curious enough to sit beside him. No promises, no pressure, just simple guidance. He showed them how to sit, how to place their hands, how to listen before playing. He did not talk much. He believed learning happened best when words did not get in the way. Some learners stayed only a few days. Others returned week after week. The boy welcomed them all. He never judged their pace because he remembered his own slow beginnings. There were evenings when the hall was filled with sound, and evenings when it was silent again. He learned to accept both. Silence no longer frightened him. It reminded him of where it all started. Outside the hall, life continued to test him. There were days when money was tight and choices were difficult. He sometimes wondered if music was a luxury he could not afford. On those days, doubt crept back in quietly. But then something small would happen. Someone would thank him for listening. A child would smile after learning a simple tune. A stranger would pause outside the hall, just to hear a few notes before walking away. These moments reminded him that value could not always be measured. He grew more thoughtful, more patient. He learned when to speak and when to stay quiet. The boy who once feared attention now understood how to carry it without losing himself. At school, he made choices carefully. He focused on learning skills that would support him, knowing that dreams needed strong foundations. He did not chase praise. He chased understanding. One afternoon, after a long day, he sat alone at the piano and played a piece he had never played before. It came together slowly, shaped by memory and feeling. When he finished, he felt a calm certainty settle over him. He realized then that music was not something separate from his life. It was woven into everything he did. The way he worked, the way he treated people, the way he faced hard days. He no longer measured success by applause or attention. He measured it by growth, by honesty, by the ability to keep going, even when no one was watching. The old piano still stood quietly in the hall, marked by years and stories. It had become a symbol not of fame, but of perseverance. People treated it with care, understanding its role in shaping something meaningful. Late one evening, as he locked the door and stepped outside, the street was quiet. He looked up at the sky and took a deep breath. The future remained open, uncertain, challenging, but he was ready. He walked home with steady steps, carrying with him lessons learned from silence, struggle, and sound. The poor kid had grown into someone who understood that real change often happens quietly, one moment at a time, and though the journey continued, he knew that wherever he went, the music would follow, reminding him of who he was and who he could still become. The years did not rush forward. They moved at a steady pace, giving the boy time to grow into the person he was becoming. Life stayed simple on the surface, but inside he felt richer than he ever had before. Not because of money or praise, but because he understood himself better. The community hall had changed again. It was still modest, still imperfect, but it felt warmer now. People greeted one another by name. Children ran in without fear. Music floated through the space more often than before. Sometimes clumsy, sometimes beautiful, always real. The boy, now older, still came quietly. He never announced himself. He preferred to arrive early or late, slipping in when the room was calm. When he sat at the piano, he played less than he used to. He listened more. He watched others take their turn, make mistakes, laugh, try again. What surprised him most was how often people looked to him for reassurance. A nod from him, a small smile, was sometimes enough to give someone courage. He never thought of himself as a guide, yet that was what he had become. There were days when he felt tired. Responsibility had a weight to it. Helping others required patience, and patience sometimes ran thin. On those days, he reminded himself that he had once needed the same kindness. Outside the hall, the neighborhood remained a mix of struggle and strength. Some families moved away. New ones arrived. Life kept changing, as it always does. The boy stayed grounded by routine, by small acts of care, by moments of music that reminded him why he started. He began to notice something deeper. The music was no longer just helping him survive. It was helping others heal. A tired worker paused after a long day to listen. A child found comfort in learning a simple tune. An elderly neighbor sat quietly, eyes closed, breathing slower with each note. These moments were not loud. They were easy to miss, but they mattered. One afternoon, a group gathered for a small event. Nothing planned, nothing formal. People shared stories, food, and laughter. At one point, someone asked him to play. He hesitated, then agreed. As he played, he looked around the room. He saw faces that had once laughed at him, faces that had once ignored him, faces that had changed just as he had. There was no anger left in him, only understanding. When he finished, the applause was gentle. It did not echo like before. It did not need to. The connection was already there. Later that evening, as the hall emptied, he stayed behind to help clean. A younger person asked him how he stayed calm when playing. He thought for a moment, then answered honestly. He said he focused on listening, not performing. That idea stayed with him. He realized that the most powerful thing he had learned was not how to play the piano, but how to pay attention. 2 moments. 2 people. To himself, there were still dreams he had not spoken aloud, paths he had not explored yet. He did not rush toward them. He trusted time. He trusted effort. As night fell, he sat alone at the piano once more. He played a few soft notes, then stopped. Silence filled the room. It felt familiar, comforting. He smiled quietly. The silence no longer meant fear or doubt. It meant peace. He closed the piano gently and stepped outside. The streetlights glowed softly. The air was cool. He walked home with steady steps, carrying years of lessons in his heart. The poor kid was no longer defined by what he lacked. He was defined by what he gave, and though the piano remained old and imperfect, the impact it had created continued to grow, carried forward by quiet strength, shared moments. In a story that began with a boy brave enough to sit down and play,